All right, guys, we've got more major realignment news, the future of college football, what's happening. The source I've been using off of Twitter apparently did an interview, and there is a lot of stuff in here talking about the future, what's going to happen with the super conferences as it pertains to college football. So let's get right into it. The first question, do you think there will be 5 conferences still around in 5 years? Who survives? There will be 3 major conferences by 2035. So that's maybe he means 2025? Yeah, I think he probably means, that seems 2035. That seems, I don't know, you'd be able to predict something like that. Who survives? A combination of the Big 12, Pac-12, ACC leftovers after the Big 10 and SEC have their pick. Most likely 3 conferences of 20 schools. So guys, I did a model of this like a few weeks ago talking about the future of college football, and it was 3 super conferences of 20 schools, the Big 10 getting Notre Dame, Stanford, and then maybe I don't know, maybe Oregon and Washington, or either Virginia and North Carolina, and then the SEC poaching all the ACC teams. It would be Florida. It's actually looking like Miami. Apparently the SEC doesn't want Miami, so we'll have to continue to follow that, but it would be the SEC poaching all the major teams from the ACC to get to 20 teams there. So that's his model, that's his pick. 320 team conferences. I also think you will see unequal revenue sharing becoming a thing with the Big 10 and the SEC in the future. And guys, this makes complete sense. So this is similar to like the idea where we weren't going to have divisions, East versus West. We were just going to have the 2 best teams play because it makes more sense. If you're going to have a conference championship game, just have the 2 best teams, right? This is like the same thing with revenue. Why is Ohio State and Rutgers making the same amount of money? It makes no sense, right? And I think that's something that's going to change, where Ohio State's going to get a bigger piece of the pie. Michigan's going to get a bigger piece of the pie. USC is going to get a bigger piece of the pie than a school like Maryland, than a school like Northwestern. Not to say those schools won't get something, they will, but it just makes sense. If a school's bringing in way more revenue, how is Ohio State and Northwestern making the same amount of money in their TV deal per year? That's just evolution. That's probably going to happen. It's the same thing with the East versus the West in the Big Ten. We all knew those divisions were ridiculous, and the evolution of college football was going to force those divisions to not exist anymore in the form that they were at, because it's like, we just want the 2 best teams. If you're going to have a conference championship game, you got to have the 2 best teams. Question, ACC versus the Big 12 versus the Pac-12. Which conference is in better shape right now? Big 12 is in the best shape currently. That's obvious. We have 4 networks wanting to bet on our content in the next 24 months. We have weathered the initial shock of losing Oklahoma and Texas and maybe have come out stronger top to... That's not correct, no. So come out stronger. You have no super teams in your conference. See, that's the one big problem with the Big 12. The conference might be deep, but there's no one at the top that's going to carry it with losing Texas and Oklahoma. That's the problem with the Big 12. Then it says, we have a chance now to make some very good additions. Pac-12 is reeling and not getting good numbers for their TV negotiations. Member schools are fighting. It's bad. So the Pac-12 right now, wow. Member schools within the conference apparently fighting against each other. The ACC, half of the conference, want out and are very fearful of falling far behind the Big 2 in revenue. So I would assume Clemson wants out, Florida State wants out, Miami wants out, any of the schools that think they're being undervalued, which many of them are with the terrible TV deal they're currently under. Is there a chance that the Big 10 and the SEC break off from the NCAA? So this is the idea of them creating their own playoff. The answer, not as long as the rest of the Power 5, 4 or 3 or whatever it is. I think I would say it's a power. I guess you could still say it's a Power 5 with Oregon and Washington being in the Pac-12, but it's tough to consider it a Power 5. Can remain relevant with good TV money, good ratings, etc. The Big 2 will not risk alienating over half of the viewing audience by using the nuclear option. See, the main issue with this, and my follow-up question, if I was interviewing this guy and he gave me this answer, I would say, what happens if Notre Dame goes to the Big Ten and Clemson goes to the ACC? Theoretically, they could 100% stage their own playoff and really not alienate that many football fans because they would have the most important teams. You would also think Miami and Florida State would go to the SEC, and, you would want to get like Oregon and Washington in the Big Ten. But it's like if these two conferences expand to 20 teams and they get the rest of the important teams remaining, like Oregon and Washington, in the Big Ten, Notre Dame in the Big Ten, Clemson in the SEC, if they stage their own playoff, there's not many teams that have much power that, are going to be able to fight against it. So that's the main issue. Right now, I agree. There's no way you can have your own playoff without Clemson involved, without Notre Dame involved. The issue is if they expand, where he was talking about maybe 3 20-team conferences, the Big Ten and the SEC become so powerful, theoretically they could break off and stage their own playoff that would be considered the national championship because they would have all the teams that matter. We hope that doesn't happen. I hope this is correct, but I'm just saying it's a situation where if they get to 20 teams, you would think if the Big Ten's at 20 teams, they have Notre Dame in their conference. They probably have maybe Oregon, maybe Washington, maybe Virginia. Mainly, that's due to academics, but they have more powerful teams in their conference. And then if they're at 20 teams, the SEC's also at 20 teams. The SEC's adding Clemson, Florida State, all the teams that matter out of the ACC. So that's a major issue. What is the biggest threat to college football? NIL, conference realignment, major sports networks, or the transfer portal? The biggest threat for the past 20 years has been networks. It's ruined rivalries and broken programs. The biggest threat of the future is NIL, absolutely. It's going to widen the gap of the haves and have-nots. It's going to turn off many of the fans that are still hanging around that enjoy the sport, the amateurism of the sport. If a players' union is formed, then it gets even murky. Yeah, no, a players' union. These kids are 17. Oh my God, dude. NIL is so bad for college football. And then people say, oh, you don't want kids getting paid. No, I'm good. With a free market, it's great. The problem is they put NIL in with zero safeguards. And all of these teams are just blatantly cheating. Nothing is happening. The NCAA is not enforcing anything. It is a total mess. Yeah, let's get them they're seriously talking about a players union for like a 16-year-old kid who's in 11th grade? Come on, guys. Oh my God. Question, how long could these mega conferences exist? Would teams like Oklahoma, USC be okay with being the fourth or best team in a mega conference with more money long term? Eventually, the hope of many ADs is that the major programs break away from the NCAA and form their own governing body complete with a commissioner and negotiate all their media as one entity. This would allow for regional divisions and then the return of the classic rivalries and affiliations. We are still 10 to 20 years away from that. So that's a major statement right there. So he's saying these mega conferences might just be a decade-long phase. They might just be a decade-long phase to where we totally split from the NCAA. We create our own thing, our own, kind of like, the NFL, like our own league, not involved with the NCAA, and we return equilibrium to a Power 5 format. Wow. That would be great. So the idea is this is just a phase. Teams just want money. With the NCAA, this is the way it has to go, but hopefully in a decade or so, of course, many of us really don't want to hear that. That is, we're not going to be around and stuff like that. So, but maybe, in a decade, they would end up returning back, to the Power 5 format. Guys, I was actually just thinking it's a real shame the Power 5 is getting scrapped because it was just getting more balanced. It was finally getting more balanced. We were seeing USC with Lincoln Riley come up. We were seeing Oregon with the NIL start to recruit really well. They were going to be a good team. Utah's been a good team. The Pac-12 was on the come up. The ACC with Miami recruiting better. They still have Clemson. Florida State's still down, but maybe they'll be better. All we needed was Notre Dame joining the ACC. And if obviously this assumes that Texas and Oklahoma remain in the Big 12 and USC and UCLA remain in the Pac-12, but we would have had almost as even as you could think. I mean, the ACC still might be a little lower, but if you put Notre Dame in the ACC, Miami's back, Clemson's still good. That's a nice conference. The Big Ten's still really good, obviously. The SEC's great. And then the Pac-12 with the Big 12 retaining Oklahoma and Texas with how Texas is recruiting. Man, we would have had such a great... It's so unfortunate. Last year, right around this time, everything changed with Oklahoma and Texas leaving because we were so close to having a much more balanced conference, 5 conferences, and I know the Pac-12's been bad, but it was getting better. So it's just so unfortunate I was just thinking about that, man, the Pac-12 was seriously getting better. What a shame that this actually happens. This question, do you expect Arizona, Arizona State, Colorado, and Utah to ultimately join the Big 12? If so, will the Big 12 be strong enough at that point to remain relevant in today's college football landscape? That's a loaded question. The way things are currently leaning, I would say Arizona and Colorado are as close to a lock as it can be without a formal offer being made yet to them. And remember, this source reported yesterday he expects an offer to come to at least Arizona and Colorado in the first week of August. So this is big news. The first week of August. The other two, well, that's up to the what the committee decides is best for the conference. I mean, you would think you would take the other two as well. If you're taking Arizona and Colorado, you would take the other two. We can add Arizona and Colorado and get a bump in revenue. If we add 4, we may actually take a small hit per school. Yeah, but how much of a bump are you really getting with those two? Let's be real. You're better off adding the 4 and being more relevant, in my opinion. If we add all 4 plus Oregon and Washington, we get a net increase per school, but not much more than just adding Arizona and Colorado alone. It gets tricky when you have so many mouths to feed. It dilutes it, yeah. Any combination of additions will only make the Big 12 stronger. So the Big 12 kind of has an interesting decision to make. They can add 2 schools, Colorado and Arizona, and see a bump in revenue. But maybe you're not getting that relevant, honestly. Arizona and Colorado aren't good football schools. You can add 4 schools and take maybe a hit in revenue because more mouths to feed. It's going to dilute things. You're paying 16 schools, but you would be more relevant because you'd also be adding Arizona State and Utah. Or you can try and add all 6 schools. But at that, I seriously don't think, I don't think I don't think Oregon and Washington are interested in joining the Big 12 at this point. They're still waiting for the potential 20-team mega conferences in the Big 10 and the SEC, and they want to get into one of those, in my opinion. So I think the Big 12 probably ends up adding those 4 teams, but after that, it gets a little bit... If you're talking about 3 20-team conferences, I don't think Oregon and Utah are going to the Big 12. I think they're going to the SEC or the Big 10 if we're talking 3 20-team conferences, in my opinion. Now, maybe the Big 10 wants other teams. There is a situation where the Big 10 says, we want Notre Dame and Stanford, and then if we want to get to 20 teams, we want teams from the ACC. We want North Carolina and we want Virginia. Then maybe they'd be squeezed out. Or they'd be left with the SEC. So it seems like if the Big 12 only adds 2 schools, Colorado and Arizona, they would get a little bump in revenue. If they add 4 schools, it's a little decrease, but it makes them more relevant in the college football world. And then if they add 6 schools, it's like marginal, probably a little bit of a decrease, but you would be getting way more relevant with Oregon and Washington. So kind of an interesting question there. Are they obsessed with revenue? Or do they want relevance in college football? And then it says, where is West Virginia in 5 years? West Virginia is hopefully winning 9 to 10 games a year. West Virginia is winning 9 to 10 games? I don't think that's going to be happening. But that's just a question, this person is affiliated with West Virginia, but yeah. And then what is the perception of West Virginia's program from other conferences? The perception on West Virginia to other conferences, it's not as good as a Mountaineer fan would like it to hear. Big 12 doesn't acknowledge us as viable. SEC respects our tradition and fan base, but we were never in serious consideration to beat Mizzou to get in. ACC is actually pretty evenly split. Yeah, I don't think anyone is knocking at the door to add West Virginia. Nothing against West Virginia, but there was this is a West Virginia person. They're affiliated with West Virginia, so they're getting questions. But guys, overall, this is very interesting stuff. We're going to continue to track it. We'll see. Right now, that's very interesting on the revenue. Does the Big 12 just want to offer 2 schools to get that revenue bump? Could it be the first week of August, them officially formally offering Arizona and Colorado? We will see if that's the next domino in realignment. You think the interviewer here, I would ask this dude straight up, give me a timeline. When is this happening? There was no questions like that. But either way, guys, very interesting stuff. We'll see what happens. But that's going to do it for this video. Make sure you're following me on Twitter. Link to that's always in the description. I'm, of course, the Depressed Ginger. Thank you for watching.